All right, welcome to the Football Journey podcast. This podcast is powered by a football journey. I am your host, Derek Ware, and I've got a very special guest, somebody that I know personally, David Rogers. This guy is awesome, and I've seen him firsthand because he is my son's, Jericho, my son's very first coach. He coached him in soccer when Jericho was 3 years old. And a little story about that first season was I remember now David and I we went to church together, and our families were all friends, and he talked us into playing soccer. And that very first game, I just remember Jericho just going up to you, David, and the first thing he did when he got on that field is go straight to crying and just latched onto your leg. And I just thought, man, this is going to be a crazy soccer season. And he's just 3. It took him a little bit to really ever catch on to soccer, and there were tears. But David, man, you handled it awesome, and it was just incredible to have you as a coach. All right, well, thanks for coming on, David.
Man, I'm glad to be here, man. It was great to be the coach too during that time, man. It was good times. That's the best time to coach, I think.
That's awesome. David's got 3 kids. Tell us about your kids real quick. Just introduce them.
So I've got 3 boys. My oldest is 11. His name is Keller. I've got a 6-year-old son. His name is Rhett, who is Jericho's age, and then I've got a 4-year-old son, DJ David Jr. Kind of ran out of names and knew my mom would like it, but yeah. So yeah, good kids.
And they all play. Now tell us what sports they all play. So Keller plays.
Yeah. So Keller plays football and runs track. Of course, at his age, he does summer track because he's in the 6th grade. And then, but even leading up to this, he'd played soccer since he was 3 years old until he was about 11. And then, you start having conflicting, sports squeeze each other out. So you can't possibly do everything. So now he's just doing football and track in the 6th grade. But really good soccer player. And then Rhett, on the other hand, he's my hefty lefty. He, really good soccer player, but also plays flag football, runs summer track, also plays t-ball, and plays basketball as well with the same group of kids. So they all kind of stay together. And then DJ is, cut his teeth last spring playing soccer for the first time. Probably, looked a lot like Jericho his first few games when he was playing. And, and now he's also playing flag football this fall, which, who knows how much he's learning, how much he knows what's going on, but he's having a great time out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. All right, so this whole thing is just about talking about youth sports and kids and being fathers and that whole process of walking kids through playing sports. I personally think that playing sports is necessary for a child's development. It provides so much stuff. Now, but when you were thinking about getting your kids involved in sports, what was kind of the goal? Like you're sitting there saying, okay, I'm going to take, like my wife and I, we had to sit down and think, okay, Jericho, he's 3. What's the goal in having him play soccer? So what kind of was your goal in having your kids play sports?
Yeah, well, I played sports growing up. I ran college track and, won a state championship in high school. And so I knew that, sports were something, it was a big part of my youth and a big piece of my character development. I think it has a lot to do with, who I am today as an employee and as a father and as a friend and a neighbor in my community. So, I felt like, sports was definitely something I knew they were going to do. We started out with soccer with Keller, and, I just really wanted him to have fun, build some self-confidence, so that when he gets older, maybe he approaches challenges, knowing, with the confidence that, whether he wins or loses, that something good is going to come from it. And I guess for lack of a better term, a really popular word right now is grit, right? But how do you build grit in your kids, when they pretty much get whatever they want, right? So wanted to put him in situations where he would have to compete and challenge himself. And
Yeah. It's crazy because Malcolm Gladwell, he interviewed all these millionaires who started out, they were poor, and then eventually they got, tons of money. And he asked them, he's like, hey, are you raising your kids the same way that you were raised? And they're like, no, I was poor growing up. I didn't have any of this stuff, and now we got money and my kids got the best of everything. And it's kind of can be the same is true for, just us. We're not rich, but I mean, you might be, but but the thing is, my wife, my kids are growing up in a house where everybody loves them, where they have a mom and dad who love each other, where things are stable, where they go to they go to great schools and they get to live in Texas, which I mean, you
Right.
already are ahead of the game there.
Exactly.
But it's like, how do you create grit in them? How do you create moments where they get to struggle and fail and come up short, but still learn to persevere, and grow in that? And for me, that was one of the goals behind playing sports. My wife and I, we sat down and we were like, hey, we want, our kids, we got 3 kids now, and it's like, we want our kids to play sports. Well, what's the goal? And we kind of had the same goals that you had, have fun. We wanted it to be a fun experience.
Right.
Number 2, we want them to have some failure in there, have some, get to see what it means to face some adversity and some challenges, and to persevere and grow in that. We wanted our kids to be coached and understand like what it means to hear, somebody tell you something and to internalize that, and then to go out and follow those instructions.
Yep.
And then just the activity of it, the getting exercise. They
Right.
they did it. I was reading an article. They did this thing where they put activity trackers on Kenyans and found that like the average Kenyan gets like 200 and some odd minutes of exercise a day, and the average American gets like 24 minutes. The
Oh,
average
wow.
American kid. And so, man, your kids are playing a million sports. Man, they're out there killing it, huh?
Oh, yeah. They're having a good time. They're having a blast. I think the other thing too, is that, it helps them build connections. We moved here 2 years ago. We were new. Obviously, I'm from here, but they're not. But within a few short weeks, Keller's coming home and he's got friends that he talks to about talks about from school that he knows from recess, right? Because they play football at school, and suddenly now he has this interest in this new sport that he and I had never gone into, which is flag football.
Yeah.
And so now we're playing with the neighbor kids and the kids that he knows from from his elementary school. So I think it helps him build connections, and I think back also from the years when I competed in sports, and some of my closest friendships that I have were not only with my teammates but with the people who coached me throughout the years, and so you want them to have that.
You still talk to your coach that coached you in summer track?
Oh yeah, Howard Ware. Yeah,
That's pretty crazy. And so you went to Baylor and ran the 400, and you still keep up with those guys too, huh?
I keep up with those guys. Yeah, pretty. Yeah, a lot of some of my fraternity brothers, but I mean honestly, I talk to them, fraternity or not. I've got a really great relationship with those guys in general. Yeah.
Now you coach your kids, so like you were telling me earlier, you coached 5 in the spring. You coached 5 different teams. Tell me what it's like to coach your kids.
First of all, 5 different teams I would never suggest. Okay, that's like first piece of advice on that. But no, but I love coaching my kids. Let's see. I'll just run down the list of the teams that I was coaching. It makes it easy. So I was coaching 2 soccer teams. I was coaching an assistant coach on a t-ball team, but t-ball has like 15 coaches or something like that. I was also coaching a flag football team, and I was coaching a summer track club that had 75 athletes on it, which was pretty demanding. There was a lot of overlap, but coaching my own kids is probably I have friends who have season tickets to the Cowboys, and they want for me to go in and buy season tickets for the Cowboys with them, and I'm like, for me, there's nothing I'd rather do on the weekends than watch my kids compete and be part of that. So I think it's Kara gets on to me sometimes. She says I'm living vicariously through my kids, but I think this is like it's kind of just adding on. It's part of my journey, is being able to spend that time with them. I do. You hear these stories coming from dads where they say avoid the long ride home. When there's like poor performance. We haven't really run into that. And I've just been really fortunate, or maybe it's just my temperament. I don't really get too caught up in that. I have learned a lot of lessons though about being a good fan. in being a parent and being a coach, I guess, on the opposite side of the sideline. So, you get to see, what did we talk about that time? It was that idea that, when you're in a game and you're cheering for your kids to succeed and do well, that you're ultimately cheering against somebody else's kid.
Yeah, that's interesting. You said that to me a while back, and I really thought about that, because I'm a high school football coach, and I'm the offensive coordinator at Princeton High School, and one of the greatest schools in Texas, by the way. But you said that to me, and as a high school coach, you're not really, when you're cheering on those kids on your sideline, the other sideline, they can't hear that, and also it's not really those kids are almost, they're grown up a little
bit. They're
young
adults.
Their psyche is not as fragile as, like, for example, my son, this is kind of funny. One of the goals that he had this year for flag football was, hey, Jericho, let's go through this practice. It was one of the first practices. Let's go through it and have fun and hustle and don't cry. Don't cry. And he's like, yeah, Dad, I'm going to do it. And he goes out there and he plays and he does all that stuff. And after practice is over, no matter what he does, I'm going to love him and be proud of him. And we're walking to the car and he looks up at me and he goes, Dad, did you see me cry? And I go, yeah, I did, son. I did see you that cry. What? And I go, why did you cry? And he goes, Dad, they were all trying to get my flags. And I was like, yeah, dude, that's how it works, man. But he was like, man, Dad, they were all trying to get my flags. Like, I had to cry. So, it's one of those things where it's like, his whole thing is it's the first time he's ever done it. He wants to be so good at it. And any little failure, to me, if I fail, I've already failed before. I've got 34 plus years of seeing that and understanding that. And so if everything that happens falls in this backdrop of all of that, but for him, his backdrop is, hey, all I've ever known is success. People tell me I'm good at things that I do. And then all of a sudden you get that little bit of, and it's just tough for their psyche. So yeah, when you're cheering for your kid who just went up and mossed this other kid, now the kid's just thinking like, oh man, so that was something that you said that put it in perspective for me. Another thing real quick, the idea of living vicariously through your kids, where you're sitting there as the fan or as the dad thinking, hey, my kid's success and failure is a reflection. Like when you said that, what I think that means is a dad on the sideline thinking, hey, my kid's success or failure is a reflection upon me as a dad. How good of a dad am I? If my kid is out there killing these other kids, that means I'm the best dad. But I don't think that's what you mean. Which obviously not is what you mean. But the idea of, hey, this is the journey that I enjoy. I've gotten to coach kids to state championships in track and field, or just coaching kids to playing football and going to college, or all these things. The relationship that you build is just so special. Of this relationship of a kid looking at you as a coach and just saying, hey, you're my guide. I need you. You're going to help me. And as a coach sitting there saying, hey, I want you to be successful. And I'm going to lay awake at night thinking about how I can help you accomplish your dreams. And, having that relationship with kids as a coach has made me just think, whatever my kids are into, if it's band, if it's tennis,
sign me up.
I'm gonna be right there. I'm gonna learn how to do it. Hey son, if you are all about playing the drums, well, I'm gonna get you a drum set and I'm gonna learn how to play the drums too, and we're gonna play them together. And I think that's what you're saying, and that's the beauty of being a positive dad coach.
Well, yeah, and so I was talking with Keller about this today because I was thinking about this conversation that we were going to have tonight, and I just said, we're on our way to football practice, like we've done, not football, but some kind of practice 2 or 3 nights a week, every week since he was 3 years old. So now I've got this, 8 years of conversations with him, about, what's going to happen, how his day was, right? what his goals are, maybe for the practice, what positions, he sees himself playing, how he's going to have an impact in a game. And we'll talk. And then we get these great conversations that happen afterwards too. And I know it's, people say like, their kids are their best friends. But, I get to share in those experiences with him and have those moments. And yeah, I just would not trade it for anything.
Those mountaintop moments where your kid or your daughter, you don't have any daughters, I've got one, are striving for something. They want to be great at something, and you've helped them along the way. And then all of a sudden they get this success in something that they have earned and worked hard towards, and you're there to give them that high five in that mountaintop moment. You're there to encourage them and to share in that, and just to be like, hey son, you see what happens when you put the work in. And that as a dad is a super special thing. And I think that every dad should experience it. I think that every parent, find out what your kids like and do that with them.
Drive them around. If you have the means, move your schedule around and drive them all around town, doing whatever it is that that they're passionate about. Somebody said something to me. It was in Freakonomics. Freakonomics said, reading 20 parenting books or reading 20 books on being a great parent is not going to make you a great parent. But the fact that you're willing to read 20 books to be a great parent is an indicator that you're probably going to be a pretty good parent. Right?
That is awesome. Yeah, that's true. And yeah, driving your kids everywhere doesn't make you a great parent. But the fact that you're willing to drive them, you're willing to spend that time with them, you're willing to invest in them and have those conversations, you're willing to sit with them at practice and coach them up, that does make you a great parent. I think that's true all the way, man. That is awesome. Okay, as a coach, coaching your kids, have you had, I'm sure you've had negative interactions with parents. Is there any types of interactions that you've had that you really take note of?
Oh man, I've had, I have had it happen. Kids soccer, youth soccer, playing in Plano, we got into some pretty crazy bad call on the ref, parents screaming at each other afterwards, and then parents approaching coaches at the end of the game, which led us to, having some conversations with, the administrators of the league and having to sit down and talk about, the best way to handle the situation. Those weren't the best. I did have one happen most recently in our spring soccer season, where this is my 6-year-old Rhett, and he's on an all boys team. Again, they're all very, very talented group of boys. They're younger, and they're kindergartners playing in a kindergarten first grade league. Well, the team that they're playing against was all girls, and we're all first graders, and so they're as big, if not bigger, than my 6-year-old boys.
Yeah,
and just as athletic. They're really good. But I think they ran a goalie situation. It could be debated, but they had somebody playing defense the whole time, which ultimately at that age you're really not supposed to have a goalie. And so the game was, I think it was 3-1. But the whole game, the coach on the opposite sideline is screaming. He's like, beat that boy, run that boy down, show these boys how to score. Don't let that boy go get that boy, inciting gender. And so it wasn't that he was cheering against my kids. And I'm glad that my kids are competitors and they just played through it and nothing got ugly, But after the game, I did take some time, and I pulled him to the side and I said, Coach, can I talk to you for a second? And he said, what do you got? And I said, I noticed during the game, I said, you got some really great athletes. First thing is what I said, honestly. I said, you got some really great athletes. I know one of the girls that plays on your team because she's played with us on a previous team. I wish you guys best of luck as you kind of go into like this little tournament play that we have at the end of the season. I said, there were some things that were happening during the game where you just continually incited like this gender, like you beat that boy, score on these boys, And he said, I don't even know why you're talking to me. You guys won. And you should just be happy with that. And I said, well, I'm trying to teach sportsmanship, and I think my kids could all see that they were playing against all girls, but not once did I ever refer to your athletes as girls, because I don't want there to be that, in the competition. I just want for great sportsmanship. And so I'm just, as a parent and as a coach, I just felt like I should, really share that with you. That's an opportunity for you. And, he didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to talk to me about it, obviously.
That's crazy. Just the idea that you should really just avoid making it. And we talk to our athletes about this. I think kids, even high school players, their intention oftentimes is to sit there and say, "Well, hey, I beat you."
Right.
We talk to our kids. Hey, we don't celebrate on them. We celebrate with our teammates. You made a great catch. Go celebrate that catch. Celebrate it with your teammates. Not,
right.
Hey, I just made this catch on you, and now I'm going to celebrate in your face, clap in your face or whatever they do. Hey, that's unacceptable. And our coach, Coach Surratt, he's the head football coach at Princeton High, man. He's incredible. He does a great job with the kids, and I've learned so much under him. But that's his whole thing is, hey, we're going to celebrate with our teammates. And
right.
we're not gonna make it about them, and it's not about them. It's about us. It's about us getting better. It's about us being our best.
Right. Executing.
Best is the standard. Your best is the standard. And man, that's incredible. That's just the little things that happen that end up, they're kids. It's so much more elevated, and I think the conversations that you have with parents that get out of hand or I'm glad that you said something to that coach, because I think as coaches, we have an obligation to not accept that, to not accept you being a bad coach, someone else being a bad coach, because it's not about wins and losses. This whole youth program, the whole kids playing sports, it's all about the kids growing and improving and getting better.
Sure.
And if like one of the non-negotiables that I have is that if my son or daughter's coach is not a good coach, is not making my kids better, if they're not enjoying that game, and by making them better, I mean making them better character-wise. I'm not concerned with wins and losses. Jericho, Everly, Ezekiel, they're not going to remember how many games they won as a third grader, as a first grader. They have no clue.
Right.
To them, it's about having fun and getting better and improving your skills and have something to work towards. So I want to make sure, that coach has that same goal, and if my kids ever had a coach that made it about winning, that made it about, hey, us versus them, that made it about, show them who's boss, that whole deal.
Sure.
My son's not playing for that coach anymore. If I had a coach that would yell at my kids, they miss a tackle, and they're running to the sideline and they're getting yelled at by a coach. Hey, you better make that tackle. My son, my daughter, my kids, they're doing their best. They're not going to be out there. We're going to coach them, make sure they're doing their best.
Right.
And if they make a mistake and they get, they should get coached up for it. No one should scream in their face. You shouldn't really scream in a 6-year-old's face anyways. It's not effective in any way, shape, or form. So my kids would never play for that. We would just have to back out of that league and not play. And that's one of the non-negotiables that we've made. And that's cool that you
right. And I'm a proponent for youth sports. I suggest people do it all the time. My coworkers are like, "Hey, I noticed that you said you had something to do all day Saturday with your kids. What do you do? I know one of your kids only 4. Yeah, get them in a youth soccer league, right? Get them in some kind of flag football. Get them in a club or, just an organization where they can, have fun and get coached, and, you get to celebrate in successes and learn lessons with them on the sideline. If I refer somebody and they end up on a coach's team that is going to coach the wrong behaviors, I feel it's my responsibility. I would feel like I had to own that, right? Like I put them in the wrong place. And so as a coach and a peer in that environment, I definitely will take any opportunity to just say, hey, great job coaching, right? Or, hey, here's one thing that was concerning to me.
Yeah, and that's good. I think it gets this perspective, this view of, there's that show on whatever channel about these football coaches coaching youth kids, and man, they do everything wrong, and man, I can't watch it. It makes my stomach hurt just seeing these coaches, and Honestly though, probably seeing that makes people think, hey, that's probably how a lot of coaches are. I've never seen that in person. I've never seen any coaches, with my kids in any sport they've played ever be that way. My son's never been
No.
yelled at in a football game. He's never been, my daughter does gymnastics and all that stuff, and her coaches are awesome coaches, incredible coaches. And I think that's how 99% of them are. And that 1% that you run across, we can just accept it and just say, oh yeah, he's a bad coach. Or we can go over and we can say something and say, hey, look, dude, that's not how. That's not. You're hurting the game that we all love. You're hurting these kids, and that's not going to be acceptable. And parents should hold their coach accountable. Parents should sit there and say, hey, you're not going to yell at my second grader because he missed a tackle or busted a coverage. You're not going to do that. You're not going to sit here and tell my kids, hey, we got to kill these guys, because they're out here having fun. And if you're not making it fun, then you're killing the game. Let me ask you this, okay? Your kids, kind of walk me through a little bit of how they started and then how they kind of respond to playing and how how do they feel about playing sports?
So I think the oldest, and what you talk about with Jericho, how difficult it was for him for his first season to kind of, I remember he came to me, like we put him on the field, he cries. He came and stood by me. I picked him up and I kind of carried him around the field while, Rhett went and scored a whole bunch of goals that day, right? But I'll tell you about Rhett in a minute and why it was like that, My oldest, I think that's really common with the oldest, right? And so Keller, when he was 3 years old, we signed up to play soccer with the kid across the street. That was his best friend, Christopher, and they're sports soulmates. And we haven't seen the kid in 2 years, and he asked Keller who his best friend is. He says Christopher, which I think is, again, sports and, all these things. But when Keller first started out playing, we'd put him on the other side of the line and we'd be standing on the sideline and he'd just stand there and cry at us. And it took about half a season before he actually played. About after the first game, Kara said, we ought to just, he's just too young. He's a lot younger than them. Maybe we could bring him back next season. And I'm like, nope, we're invested. We got nothing else to do. Yeah. Right. I mean, at that point, we were basically single with a baby, before he could even really interact. But it was, no, we're going to finish it out. And because if we leave right now, when we come back, we're going to pick up where we left off.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So we're just going to ride it out. And we went and we just continued going. About halfway through the season, he got out there and he started scoring goals, and, it was fun for him, and so seasons moving forward, he was always consistently, 1 to third best player on the team, playing with his friends and just having a good time playing soccer. We tried to keep the kids together. That was one thing that was really important for us, was that, at least there was some core unit of kids that were moving from one team to another. But yeah, and then of course there was a pretty big gap between our kids. So our oldest is 5 years older than our middle son. So when Rhett was 3, and then the difference between number 2 and number 3 is only 2 years. So when Rhett was 2, Kara has DJ. So there's no way now that I'm leaving the house with my 5-year-old to go coach soccer without bringing my 2-year-old with me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So for him, at that point it was, soccer practice twice a week, game on the weekend. And when you're at home with mom all day long, that's what you look forward to, is getting out of the house and going and doing stuff and playing soccer with the big kids. And we might use him as a prop, every once in a while and get him involved. So he knew about sports and knew about soccer and competition whenever it was time for him to start playing. And so he just kind of went, and I think his experience, his first season was, he started out, I think his first game, he scored like 6 goals. Yeah. The opposite. Keller scored like 3 the whole season, right? And Rhett by the end of the season was scoring 12 and 15 goals a game.
Yeah.
I
remember that. I remember that season, and it's here. I've got my son. He's my firstborn. He's 3. and you've got your son Rhett. Man, Rhett's just running circles around everybody, and you sit there as a parent. It would be tempting. And I'm thankful because I've had this experience as a coach where I get to see kids as freshmen, and then watch them and see what they look like as seniors, and those 4 years from freshman to senior year, night and day. For example, you'll like this story. There's a kid that I coached named Marcus Jones, and he was a freshman B team football player. But man, the kid worked so hard. And his senior year, he was an incredible football player for us, incredible athlete. He ran track. He triple jumped for me. He was and he was awesome at those things. One of the best in our district, in our area. Now he's playing football at Baylor, and you see these kids start here, and then all of a sudden, man, they just rise and they improve because they put that work in. And so I understood that this is a process, hey, my son, everybody starts at zero. You're going to start out being terrible, and you're going to get to good later, and like you said, hey, if we take him out now, he's just going to come back. Right now, he's just not very good. But if we take him out now, he's just going to come back and be not very good. But if we leave him in it and let him grow through that adversity and improve, then all of a sudden now he's killing it. I sit there and I'm seeing these little videos on Facebook and stuff, and man, he's killing it. But it's because he put that work in and he stayed with it, and you stayed with it. And so that was just a reminder for me, is that, hey, it's a process. But sometimes as parents, we see the Rhetts of the world who are out there and we're like, man, why is my son not like him? Why is my son not able to do that? But when you dig in deeper, you realize, oh, hey, Rhett, he's got an older brother. He's been doing this soccer thing. He's been seeing it. My son is a firstborn, or Keller is a firstborn. It's kind of weird because and I think you told me this about kids, the firstborn gets given a lot of things, Hey, here's your food. Here's your stuff. Hey, look, we got you this toy. We got you this. Right. And then the firstborn is always being taught, hey, you got to share. You got to share. Share that with your little sister. And the secondborn is prison tough.
Yeah,
hey,
hard.
You're prison hard. If you want food, man, you're gonna have to knock someone over to get it. If you want this, you're gonna have to say something because no one's giving you that stuff. And
you're competing against somebody who's a better communicator than you are. They're bigger than you. They're probably smarter than you. They're a better communicator. They're probably a little bit more charismatic than you are. So there's all these, sub levels just to get what you want. You've got to really step your game up. And so
that'd be advice that I would say as a parent is don't be discouraged by the Rhetts of the world who are just out there as 3-year-old just kicking goals in every other second. Understand that they're on a different they've had a different experience, and that if your son, if my son, if all the kids will stick with it, Jericho has gotten to be, he's gotten to be pretty good now, and I'm proud of him, and I know that he's just on one part of his journey, and in the end, I know the outcome is going to be, if he puts the work in, he's going to get the result that he wants, and he's a super hard worker, awesome kid. And the same's true with my daughter. And I've got a newborn son, and the same, is going to be true for him. If he puts the work in, he's going to get the outcome that he wants. He's going to get a great outcome. It's not going to be easy, but that's something that you just learn through sports. You agree?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. 100%. And the other thing I think it's really important to remember too, is that kids, all kids, based on whatever situation, mature at different rates, mentally and physically. What was it? Marcellus Wiley, his claim to fame. He was the fastest 12-year-old in the nation in the 100-meter dash. Look at him now, Marcellus Wiley. Of course, now the next year he was the slowest 13-year-old in the nation in the 100-meter dash. Of course, he's this big honking, 6'6", 320-pound, tackle, or defensive end. But his body, at 12 and 13 years old, was getting ready for, all this weight that it was going to put. So he's tall and he's putting on all these muscles, and then you got a kid who's going to top out at, like a Keller, who's going to top out at, 6 foot, 180 pounds or something like that, he's not going to be the biggest kid on the track right now, and all so many sports, sprinting especially, and I guess I'm ultimately referring to track and field in this case, has got so much to do with power and your stride length and your ability overall to cover ground. And so Keller might be turning at 1,000 miles an hour, his feet are rolling, but he can't compete with somebody who has to take 75% of the steps that he does and can do it with broad shoulders and strong legs, right? So it's where do you want to be the fastest kid in the nation at 11 or 12, or do you want to be the fastest kid in the nation at 17 or 18 years old? And so it's a patience piece to it too.
Yeah, that was one of the goals of our, earlier we talked about goals for our kids playing sports, and one of the goals for my kids was for them to be successful in the future. I wanted to lay an athletic foundation that if later on they found out, hey, sports is what I really love, that they would be able to pursue that. And so you lay that foundation through doing youth sports, and not just doing one sport, but doing multiple sports.
Right.
I look at every year our best athletes at our school, our best athletes on our football team play multiple sports. They play football, baseball, soccer, track, basketball. They do all these other sports, and that I think is not just a coincidence. I think that's what makes them good.
Sure.
People kind of get in this argument about, well, maybe it's just that good athletes choose to play all the sports. Well, or maybe it's just that they're great athletes because they play all the sports. Well, I just think you lay a foundation. How can Keller, when did he start doing summer track?
2 years ago.
Okay, so how old was he?
9.
Okay, so he runs summer track from age 9 to 19. How is he not going to be really good at the end of that? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you're out there practicing track and you're practicing running full speed, the logical conclusion to that is that you're going to be really good at running full speed. If you're playing, you start playing basketball in the 3rd grade, the logical conclusion is that you're going to be good. You're going to be a solid basketball player when you get to high school, because you just put the reps in. As long as the coaching is positive, as long as the kid's improving and all the other things are right, that we've talked about earlier. I mean, of course he's going to be good at basketball, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Hey.
Yeah, I would argue. I've watched. So Rhett starts out playing soccer. He's really good at soccer. Played flag football. He's fast. He can run. He understands the field, what's happening on the field, and he can get around and keep people from pulling his flags. Right. Then this coach says, "I'm going to take kindergartners and we're going to go play basketball." Now basketball is absolutely my worst sport. Right? I love it. I love to watch it, but I run straight and turn left. And so he says, I'm going to take them out there and we're going to do six-year-old basketball. You imagine in the YMCA league, that they're going to be running around with the basketball, nobody's dribbling, and not making a lot of baskets. But this coach was just so good at, he had very high expectations for what they could do. They're going to learn how to dribble right-handed and left-handed. We're going to practice crossovers. We're setting screens. Right, the kids are coming down the court and they're calling plays, and we would beat teams like 40-8. And I mean it was, but and the other thing, and the other part about it is that we're running a man defense. The kids are sticking with them. They're getting rebounds. They're just making an effort. Now, don't get me wrong; they travel every once in a while, but the kids were making a genuine effort to get out there and connect. But what they gained from playing basketball, and I saw it firsthand, was that they're in this small court with this big basketball, and they're throwing it with two hands, back and forth to one another. Now take that skill and take that same team and then put them all back out on a football field, right? And give them all day to watch a football coming in from, 10 yards down the field, right? Their hands got a lot better.
Yeah.
Basketball gives you great hands. It does.
It does.
There's no two ways about it, man. Basketball gives you great hands. And so, I'm looking at now a 1st grade football team that has 7 passing touchdowns on the season in the first 3 games that they've played. you know. And I don't think the teams that we've played against combined have thrown 7 passes, you know. So, but it's again these little skills that translate into successes in other places. So
That's awesome. So they stick together, huh? From football to basketball, and that's just, I mean, yeah, they're gonna grow together and be really good. Man, it's just cool just to see that process and just to always remember that it's a process. You know, I think my own son even probably forgets that he wasn't. Here's a story for you. So after he went on, he played flag football, and the first year playing flag football, he would cry. He pulled 0 flags the whole year in any game, caught 0 passes, ran for 0 yards, but was there and was learning kind of the concept of the whole thing. And I remember in practice, the first time he pulled a flag in practice, we would set up a drill where they'd go 1-on-1, and the second he pulled that flag, he went straight to trash talking. I mean, I'm standing there, you know, and he just turns to me and he goes, "Dad, did you see that?" I was like, "Give me that flag." And I was like, "Yeah, Jericho, you pulled the flag, man. Good job, buddy." You know, but just that whole, and you know what? It builds so much confidence too. And also, I sometimes see him thinking, man, I got to get better. You know, there's kind of this little bit of, hey, Dad, can we go throw a little bit? Hey, Dad, can we go do this a little bit? Because I want to get better. I got to get better at it. You know, sometimes he'd look out there early on and see and think, you know, he sees the Rets of the world and thinks, man, I got to get better. And that's a valuable moment. And I know that those moments for me are valuable. You know, when something happens and I sit there and say, man, I got to get better. And the renewed joy of waking up in the morning thinking, hey, you know what? I got to get better at this. And having steps that I was going to take to make sure that happened is a special thing, you know, and that's cool to give that to our kids.
To be able to see that, right? To see that first moment where your son talks a little trash because he has some success out there on the field.
Give me that flag. I mean, it didn't take him much success, just a little bit of success, you know, and he's playing flag football this year and he's got a great coach. And he loves it, enjoys it. He enjoys his friends. And Princeton, the town that he's playing in, the school that I coach at, man, it is so awesome to play youth sports there. You know, they get to play in the stadium. They get announced at you know, different events in the town, and they're part of the homecoming parade and just those little cool things for kids to just be engaged in the community, to know people, and for them to be, you know, I think that kids, I think all, you know, kids who try hard at something should be modeled, should be lifted up and said, you know, hey, this kid tries hard to do something. You know, it's a difference between, you know, sitting on the couch at home or you know, just doing nothing, but to be able to step out and to try something.
I think everybody wants to feel relevant, you know, and I remember coloring things at school and they said, you know, hey, this picture, we're going to hang it in the mall. And then you would go, you know, and then you go through and there's like 10,000 pictures and you'd spend an hour trying to find my picture. And I existed at that moment. Right. And I, you know, whether it's in a parade, obviously it's something you work hard for, you know, you're part of something, people get to see and recognize that you're part of a group. You know, I think being relevant is, you know, I think at the least, you know, one of the really awesome things that comes out of, you know, being part of a community and being able to play sports and things like that.
Yeah, I just think that we should promote the behaviors that we want to see in kids, you know, and in anybody, and all the way across the board, from my students, from the high school players that I coach, from my own kids. One of the things that I think should be modeled the most and promoted the most is just the hard work, you know, being willing to step out, risk a little bit, you know, those football players, those, you know, people in the band, everybody. Anytime you step out in front of people, you're going to face, you're there for an opportunity where you might fail publicly in front of people. And to be willing to take that, feel that fear, and to persevere through it is something that we should applaud, that we should say, hey, man, that's what we want our kids to do. And so I think that's a really cool thing. So let me ask you this now. Kids playing sports, youth sports, are you worried about injuries at all?
Yeah, yes, I think especially with football, you know, um, but then the track coach in me, says that there are a lot of things, a lot of injuries that occur are things that we could have avoided. I think a lot of injuries occur whenever we skip steps, and so I think one of my goals as a father, as a father coach, and of course a coach of other athletes, right, is just to make sure that we have a routine that we go through, make sure that we're warming up appropriately, that we're obviously keeping sweats on, hydrated, our diet is good, that we're well rested before we go out and we perform. Those are the types of injuries that I think that for certain we can avoid just by having really great habits,
like soft tissue injuries.
right.
Hamstring pulls and groin pulls and things like that. You sit there and you have to look at yourself. If you have kids that are pulling their hamstring, you got to look at yourself and say, well, how are we practicing? How are we preventing this? How can we not have these soft tissue injuries? Because those are pretty much self-inflicted wounds.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's, there's great equipment, I'm fortunate. This is Keller's first season playing tackle football. He plays running back.
Sixth grade, right?
Sixth grade. Yeah. So he's kind of he's Pop Warner age, or he's not playing in a Pop Warner league, but he plays in a league that feeds into his high school. And, I played football, so it's hard for me to say, that, obviously that doesn't mean that he's that he can't be injured, we pray to God, and we try and play smart, and we try and make sure that we've got our head in the game and that we're making wise decisions. There are some injuries though, and it's kind of what I was like one today earlier when you rang me. Keller was on the couch and he's icing his ankle. For me, this was like an injury that I'm actually kind of okay with. I think it's a great learning experience for him, but he rolls his ankle, in his last game. It wasn't the first time he'd rolled his ankle in a game. He actually had rolled his ankle 2 days before his first game of the season, and he's just furious with himself. He's crying. Coaches are thinking that he's crying because, he's hurt, and he's crying because he knows that he's probably not going to be able to play in the first game. So we come home and we start looking at videos, and he's wondering what's wrong with him, and I'm like, it's an ankle sprain, and so we ice it and elevate it, and then we compress it and push all the blood out and let the blood come back in, and we went through this process probably 20 times over the course of the next 2 days, and he was ready to play in that game, right? And at 95%, he was ready to go. He's a young kid, bounce back. Right, no problems. Last game, Saturday, he has an injury, rolls his ankle, and we get home, and he says, "Man, my ankle's really sore. All right, so let's go ahead and ice your ankle. Yeah, you need to go ahead and ice your ankle, man. I'm watching college football." He doesn't get up. He stays on his iPad all day long. Right. Couple hours later, Keller, have you iced your ankle? He's done nothing. Right. I brought it up probably 4 or 5 times that Saturday after the game. Then the next day, Sunday, go to church, come back. Yeah, I notice he's limping. You need to make sure you ice your ankle whenever you get home. Yeah. Right. Nothing. No activity throughout the whole day. Didn't ice his ankle at all. Monday was a holiday. Tuesday goes to school. Yesterday, and he says, "Man, I couldn't even really play football at recess today. My ankle was hurting so bad I couldn't run." So at this point, I can't make him do it. Right. He's almost 12 years old. He can go in the refrigerator and get some ice. If this is what's important to him.
Yeah.
Right. Then he can take on that amount of ownership and at least stop the pain on his own and just take the first step. And if he wants me to take him to the doctor, I'll do that. But we know what it is. So yeah, today today he went to football practice and he was able to give about 75% at football practice. He got in the car and he was pretty depressed. He was pretty, and then that's when we had this conversation, right? It was like, you're at the age now where when you realize that something is the right thing for you, you can't wait for me to make you do it. This includes brushing your teeth, right? Doing your homework, maybe fixing your hair in the morning or making sure that you look sharp. Or when you know that you have an injury and you know what the remedy is for it, to just take it upon yourself and the ownership and ice your own stinking ankle. And I'm confident he'll be fine for Saturday. But I think that there's all different ranges of injuries. I think that there's those that you can prevent. There's those that that teach our kids, discipline and how to take ownership of, their current situation and maybe inconvenience themselves for a little while because they can see further than 5 minutes into the future. And then there's these other injuries that are just catastrophic that, I just, I hope that,
have you seen any major injuries as a coach?
No, I haven't encountered any major injuries as a coach. From a track perspective, we've dealt with, escalated temperatures out on the track and it's, 105 degrees out there and, athletes overheating and things like that. But I've never seen, broken bones or necks. Not in my experience. Not at this point.
Yeah. That's interesting. That even in a little injury, that is a learning opportunity for the kids. And the athletic director at Princeton High School, Stacy Dillard, told me this the other day, and I thought it was just gold. He said, "Hey, if you don't ever teach them to hunt, or if you're always feeding them, they're never going to learn to hunt.
Right.
If you're always sitting there saying, 'Hey, let me make you your ice for you, and let me do this, let me do that,' they're not going to learn to do it for themselves. And so you're teaching your boy to hunt by not always feeding him. So that's good. I haven't seen really major injuries. I played youth sports. I played tackle football starting in 3rd grade, and I played all the way up through 5 years of college football.
Sure.
And I didn't really ever, I've never, I made it through for whatever the grace of God, no concussions, no broken bones. I remember I got hit in the rib one time pretty hard that made it hard to sleep for a couple weeks. And I've rolled ankles, I pulled a hamstring, but nothing major, just things that you got to take care of, injuries that you got to take care of. And I learned, to take care of my body and to get the right amount of sleep and to do all those things through that process. And it's cool that kids are doing that too. I think one of the concerns is concussions, is that your brain is what makes you who you are. And so I make sure that my kid, whenever he starts to get to tackle football age, that he has a really good mouthpiece, that he has a helmet that fits well, and that he knows, this is going to sound weird, but that he knows how to fall down. I realized this a while back is I was coaching a particular team that were having silly injuries. Like a kid broke his wrist, and what happened was simply he was falling forward and he put his hand out to stop him, and all of his weight went on his wrist, and he broke his wrist. Which, if you and we learned, hey, if you're falling, putting a weak limb out like your arm, when you have someone on your back, is not going to help you. And so we talked to, so what we did to remedy this is we took the kids to the mat room and we worked on doing forward rolls, backwards rolls. And now when you watch college football, when you watch NFL football, when you watch high school football, look at it and see how often does a kid do a forward or a backwards roll. A kid goes up, catches the ball. They don't put their hands behind them and fall backwards. Instead, they tuck their chin in and they kind of curl their back a little bit, and they fall on the middle of their back, which is then dispensed over their shoulder, and then they end up doing a a backwards roll. I'm going to try and embed a video of that here, or maybe
There's also like rugby tackling, right?
Yeah, where your head is out of it. You're tackling that back hip. There's so many things that can be done, and I think the game is safer now than it's ever been.
Sure.
With the idea of, hey, it's spread. Before it used to be, when I was even growing up,
wishbone.
Hey, all the guys are in here, and you're running in there, and it's a big old cloud of dust, and you gain a couple yards, and teams would take 18 plays to score, and it's just 18 collisions, 11 guys colliding and now it's more, hey, let's throw it out on the edge, let the kid catch it, run, he'll get tackled, but it's not you're not running into a safety coming downhill on you.
Right. Yeah, well, the conversation is different. I had great coaches growing up, right? But I was really coached to hit kids with my head, man. I mean, that's just when I first started out.
Yeah. And now it's totally changed.
It's totally different. Yeah. So, and then I think, and I don't know how much this ultimately, but I do find confidence. Like I try and buy the nicest equipment that I can for them. Like Keller feels good, looking at seeing Dak wearing the same football helmet that he's wearing. He's like, Dak has the same helmet as me. I don't know if it's the same, but I feel good. At least the outside of it looks the same. It's got so. I know these kids are hitting a lot, not as hard as the pros are. So.
Yeah, so knowing how to fall down, having good equipment, being coached the right way to take your head out of the game, and to rugby tackle and to do all that stuff. I think the game is really safe now. We haven't had, I haven't had it, and I think also we do a lot better job of identifying a concussion. I know when I was growing up, it was, hey, you just got your bell rung, you're fine, just go hang out, and now it's hey, if there's a tough collision, the trainer just goes out there to see, and they ask him questions and they evaluate the kid, and if in high school right now the way it's set up is, and I think this is awesome,
right?
If you show any symptom of a concussion, we're going to treat that like you received a concussion, and so now you go to a doctor. And once that doctor clears you to come back, then we're going to put you through a 6-day protocol, and each day has a different thing. And so if you get hit hard and you have a headache, you are not going to play the next game in a high school football game. You're going to, because the protocol takes a period of time to go through, so you're automatically out the next game. And if it takes you a while to get cleared from that doctor, then you're going to be at the game after that or the game after that. And so and I agree with it, just being very cautious about dealing with our brains and making sure that our kids are not hurting themselves, they're not damaging their brain. And right. I think we do a great job of it.
Right. Yeah, and I my 3 kids, man, a lot of times I'm more concerned about them hurting themselves around the house than I am, playing a sport at this point. Trampoline in the backyard, which doubles as an MMA court or MMA mat. But yeah, kids are kids, and they're gonna hurt themselves. I think, I'm glad that I try and be there. And we're at every practice, and I think that's one thing that's really important too, is that the parents are there at every practice that they can be, especially at this age, to be able to offer feedback if maybe your kid's not doing something completely appropriate as far as they're trying to hurt somebody else or they're putting themselves in a place. We talk about that too. I think you talked about like falling, and my kid's in the 40th percentile for his age group. He'll grow out of it, but now we're talking about, hey, maybe run out of bounds. You don't have to fight as hard for 1 yard. So just making wiser decisions. And I think that I have to be there at the practices, at all the games, and be able to share those experiences with them.
So how do you and Kara, how long have you and Kara been married?
12 years in November, man. 12.
Man, yeah. That is awesome. That is awesome. And you guys are, great parents. And that. Now, let me ask you this. how do y'all find time? How do you guys, now you travel for work? How do you find time to make all these things happen? Because one of the biggest things, like even for Britt and I, we have our kids involved in sports,
Mhm.
but we're like, hey, let's do another thing, or let's get our son, Jericho, let's get him doing piano. He likes piano. We got a little keyboard upstairs. Let's teach him how to do that or whatever. But then it's like, all right, who's going to drive him, and how are we going to find time for this?
Right.
How do y'all find that?
Well, okay. So, well, you know this about us, but we're church every Sunday, and we serve. But actually, the way that we connected with you guys was with a small group through church, and we do small groups, so we try and, we try and keep those in front of us. Absolutely church service, right? Every Sunday, but the small groups, if we can find, if there's a small group that kind of fits our schedule, then we're going to try and join that. I'll say also, the time that we have together with the kids, a lot of times is our time together, going to their sporting events, getting them ready. I do have the flexibility of working from home, and she's at home all the time, so that also adds to the time that we spend together. Date night, one of the biggest reasons why we moved to where we moved. We moved from Plano, Dallas area to the town that I grew up in, and I actually live about 200 yards away from my parents.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't think 10 years ago I would have thought that was as cool as it is now, but at 40, I'm totally fine with my mom popping up whenever she wants to and relieving us and taking the kids with her to the pool, or just setting it up and just coming and sitting on the nest so that she and I can, Kara and I can leave and, Christmas shop or go have dinner or celebrate a birthday with one of our other friends, so.
Is Kara, you looked up when I said her name, is she right there?
No, she's not here. She's not here.
I was going to tell her to say hi, but man, that is awesome. So just having a safety net, putting church as your priority, and serving at church and having family groups, that's the priority, of course, you said. And then just having an infrastructure set up to where you can go and spend time with your kids and cheering them on and invested in them. And I mean, that's just a cool thing.
Another thing too, is, in the amount of time that I've known you, I think maybe not. Yeah. In the amount of time that I've known you, I didn't work for the company that I work for now, and I didn't work from home. I was in, like financial services and sales, and it required that I was, at work all the time, 12 and 14 hours a day, and sometimes Saturdays. And it got to a point to where Kara and Keller went on a vacation with my family. Like my mom and my dad and my sister and my brother-in-law and all their kids all went on a vacation, and I stayed at home because I had to work because I had to make the money,
Yeah.
And my brother-in-law said, maybe David should think about, changing industries and coming over. And so now I work in a very corporate environment, but it's from home. I took a significant pay cut to come home and be able to spend time with my family, like 40% pay cut type move. It was rough, but I will tell you, I mean, I haven't missed any of it. Just to be able to have that time with my kids, I can, get to be coach of all sports, connect with the finer things. Even when I am busy and I do travel, maybe a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Tuesday through Thursday, at least I know that every other day of the week that I'm there is, 24 hours. I'm able to offer assistance. We're able to be a team. So, I think that for me, I made that decision a long time ago. I said, work. Kara had a job before we had kids. She decided that she wanted to, forgo working for a while so that she could spend time with the kids. And, and I think I made a similar decision where I said, I'm not going to spend all this time trying to make as much money as as I possibly can. I have everything that I need. And so, how can I get more out of, the unit that I have in out of my time? So
that's awesome. Yeah. Making family a priority. And man, I just feel like, man, I never feel like I'm home enough. and as a coach, we have summers off and all that stuff. And
Mhm.
we live real close to the school that I coach at. I mean, it's just a dream deal. And so they come to work and every now and then, Jericho she'll drop him off and he'll come and watch, a game or practice or whatever, and that's really neat. But just I always feel like, man, I can never see him enough. I just wish I could see him even
Right.
more, and finding that perfect balance, and you found it. And man, I really enjoy having time to spend time with my kids too. And it is a valuable thing. And, one of the most heartbreaking things is I remember talking to a coach a long time ago, and he looked at me and he was like, man, Derek, he goes, I've been trying to be a head coach for the last 7 years. He goes, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to be a head coach. He goes, I'm just going to start focusing on making sure I take care of my kids. And I remember hearing that and just like that breaking my heart. He's a great guy, but it's like,
Right.
it's like, man, you're pursuing this career goal so hard. And then you end up looking back and thinking, man, I missed out on those kids. And the ironic thing is that the second he said that to me, I saw a big change in him of being locked into those kids and really caring about those kids. Eventually he became a head coach. Like later that year, he became a head coach. And his kids play for him and they grow through that whole thing. And it's just like, man, the second he put the goal on put his career goal as the second thing and put his family and, the other things above that, all of a sudden, the first shall be last and
Of
the last
course.
shall be first. It's
The little things are the big things, right? And that's an awesome story, right? I'm sure he spoke different and carried himself differently, right? And yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, man, David, it has been awesome talking to you, and I learned a lot just as a dad, just the way you handle it, and you're a couple years ahead of me as far as your kids are a little bit older, and so it's cool to see kind of down the line, and that story just about Keller, where he started and where he is now is just a great reminder for everybody. Just stick with it, and you see these incredible growth with these kids and. Man, it's awesome. So, hey, thanks for coming on the podcast. I really
thanks for having me, man. Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure coaching Jericho. I'm glad. I don't take any credit. You're a great coach. I want to know how many free throws he can shoot out of 100. How many free throws does he hit out of 100 shots?
Hey, we have that. I'll post a video. I think we've had that hoop set up in the house where it has two goals on it. And, it's like an arcade hoop that you shoot on. And it keeps score. And I remember, he'd been banging around on that thing for a long time. And he gets to the top of the stairs and he goes, Dad, will you come play basketball with me? And I was like, of course I will. I go up there and I'm thinking, man, I'm fixing to whoop this kid in this basketball. Yeah. And I'm over there and I'm shooting and I'm just making every one of these shots, just killing them. And I'm thinking, man, the game is over before it even started. And the game ends, and I look at the score and realize that I just lost a 99 to 96 shootout. And I'm thinking, nah, this thing is broke. This isn't right at all. There's no way. And so I pull my phone out because I just was like, I'm gonna document this. I pull my phone out, and I'm like, Jericho, shoot your shots, and he just starts draining them. Makes like 18 in a row. And I'm just like, well, he has put the work in. And so there's a video on my Twitter. If you go to my Twitter handle, it's just Derek Ware, DARRICK, You go to there. One of the videos on there is a video of him when he first started. I remember we bought that hoop. And I was like, all right, Jericho. Well, actually, my parents, my mom and my stepdad bought the hoop for him for Christmas. We broke that thing out, set it up, put the balls in it. Jericho, shoot some shots. And I got out my camera because I wanted to see. He missed every one of those shots. It gives you like a 30 seconds, and he missed every one, and he just kind of turns and it's just kind of like, well, I suck at this, but. And then, so I found that video and I spliced it with the video of him making the 18 shots, just as a reminder, really, for me that, you know what, nobody walks into the basketball gym and just starts draining 3-pointers. Michael Jordan didn't do that. Steph Curry didn't do that. None of those guys did that. You go in the basketball gym and you start bricking shots off the hoop, and then you decide, hey, you know what? I'm not going to let it end here. I'm going to keep getting better at this. And then you become Steph Curry.
Then you put in the hours, right? Then you put in the hours.
You put in the hours, and then you become Steph Curry. Then you become Michael Jordan. So, and I was proud of Jericho, not because he beat me in basketball. I ended up sending him to bed and practicing myself because I can't live in a house where my 6-year-old can beat me in a game of hoops. But not that he beat me. I wasn't proud of that. I was proud of the fact that he was bad, but worked at it and then became good at it. And that's something that I know is gonna be powerful with him for the rest of his life. That's something that he's gonna use the rest of his life, and so that's something that's special.
Yep. So good, man. Hey, he's lucky to have you as a coach and a dad.
Hey, thanks again. Stay on the line here for a second. I'm going to sign out here. This has been the Football Journey podcast. I am your host, Derek Ware. This podcast is powered by A Football Journey. A Football Journey is a hands-on character curriculum that coaches use with players. Every player receives a manual, and a coach sits down and walks each player through the manual. The manual covers lessons about the importance of putting the team before yourself, unselfishness, how to care about others instead of just yourself. It talks about drugs, alcohol, dating. It talks about how to handle the pressure of big games. All these things are discussed in the manual. And as always, please reach out to me. I love hearing your feedback. You can email me at my name. It's DARRICKWARE@gmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at the same thing. It's DARRICKWARE, just at Twitter. And please reach out to me. Don't forget to subscribe and like to the video. Thank you.